Ladies and gentlemen, what if the man telling you, I love you, is actually the one destroying your confidence? What if the person you're fighting to keep is the very reason you've stopped recognizing yourself? The most dangerous relationships don't always begin with pain, begin with perfection. Today, you'll discover the warning signs that millions of people overlook until it's too late. Stay until the end, because one decision could save you years of heartbreak, emotional confusion, and self-doubt. If this message describes what you've been living through, don't stay silent. Hit subscribe, because your healing starts with truth. Like this video so more people trapped in toxic relationships can find hope. Comment, I choose me, if you're ready to reclaim your peace and your power. The first thing you have to understand is this. A narcissistic man doesn't simply enjoy attention. He depends on it. It's like oxygen to him. Every conversation, every achievement, every celebration, every problem somehow circles back to him. At first, you may mistake this for confidence. You might even admire how passionately he talks about his dreams, his success, and his opinions. Confidence is attractive, but there is a difference between confidence and self-obsession, and that difference can change the course of your life. In the beginning, he'll make you feel like you're the most important person in the room. He'll ask questions, make you laugh, tell you you've never met anyone like him. Everything feels exciting. Everything feels intense. You think you finally found someone who truly understands you. But slowly, almost without you noticing, the spotlight begins to move away from you and stays fixed on him. You tell him about a promotion at work, and within seconds, he's talking about his own career. You share your struggles, and somehow his problems become bigger. You celebrate your accomplishments, but instead of feeling genuinely proud of you, he finds a way to compete. Instead of saying, I'm so happy for you, he starts telling stories about himself. Instead of listening, he's waiting for his turn to speak. Pay attention to that pattern, because patterns never lie. A healthy relationship is built on mutual curiosity. Two people listen. Two people celebrate each other. Two people make room for one another's dreams. But when you're dating someone with deeply narcissistic traits, your life slowly becomes the supporting role in a movie where he believes he's the only star. The dangerous part is that it doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual. One conversation at a time, one interruption at a time, one dismissed feeling at a time. And before you know it, you've stopped sharing your victories because you already know how the conversation will end. You've stopped talking about your dreams because they never seem important enough. You've started shrinking yourself just to keep the peace. Think about that for a moment. How many people are living smaller lives simply because someone else needs to feel bigger? A narcissistic man often measures his value by comparison. If you're succeeding, he feels threatened. If you're receiving attention, he feels invisible. If you're happy without him, he feels like he's losing control. So instead of celebrating your growth, he unconsciously or intentionally redirects the attention back to himself. Sometimes it sounds harmless. I've done something even better. You think that's difficult? Listen to what happened to me. That's nothing compared to what I've been through. Little by little, your experiences are minimized. Your emotions become secondary. Your voice becomes quieter. And one day you wake up wondering why you no longer feel seen. Here's the truth most people don't realize. Love is not measured by how loudly someone talks about themselves. Love is measured by how deeply someone listens to you. When someone genuinely cares about you, they don't compete with your happiness. They become part of it. They don't need to steal your moment because your joy brings them joy. They don't interrupt your story because they're interested in hearing the ending. Real love creates space. Selfish love takes space. There's a world of difference between those two. You should never have to earn the right to be heard in your own relationship. You should never feel guilty for sharing your success. You should never feel like your feelings are too inconvenient to matter. Your voice deserves respect. Your dreams deserve attention. Your pain deserves compassion. Never allow someone else's ego to convince you that your life is less valuable than theirs, because here's what eventually happens. The more you make everything about him, the less you remember who you are. You begin asking for permission to express yourself. You overthink every conversation. You rehearse what you're going to say because you're afraid of being interrupted or criticized. That's not love, that's emotional survival. And nobody should have to survive a relationship that was supposed to be a place of peace. The strongest people aren't the ones who can tolerate endless emotional neglect. The strongest people are the ones who recognize it before it becomes their normal. They understand that relationships should multiply peace, not drain it. They know that respect is not optional, it's foundational. Always remember this. Someone who truly values you will ask about your day and genuinely care about the answer. They'll celebrate your victories without making them about themselves. They'll comfort you without turning your pain into their own performance. They'll make you feel heard, appreciated, and emotionally safe. Never settle for being an audience member in someone else's life story while your own story is being ignored. Because your dreams matter, your voice matters, your heart matters, and the right relationship will never make you question whether you deserve to be seen. It will remind you every single day that you already are. One of the most dangerous things about a narcissistic man is that he rarely controls you with obvious force. He doesn't always raise his voice. He doesn't always make threats. In fact, if manipulation were loud and easy to recognize, far fewer people would get trapped. The real danger is that his control often arrives quietly, wrapped in affection, concern, or even kindness. By the time you realize what's happening, you've already begun questioning yourself instead of questioning his behavior. At first, it may seem harmless. He asks where you're going. He wants to know who you're spending time with. He tells you he's only worried about you because he cares. That sounds like love, doesn't it? But healthy love gives you freedom. Control disguises itself as protection. There's a difference, and learning to recognize it could save you years of emotional pain. A manipulative person doesn't want to control your body first. He wants to control your mind. If he can influence how you think, how you feel, and how you see yourself, then he no longer has to force anything. You'll begin making decisions that benefit him because you've been conditioned to believe they're the right choices. One of the most common tactics is guilt. Suddenly, every decision you make becomes a reason for him to feel offended. If you spend time with your family, he says you don't care about him. If you focus on your career, he says you're neglecting the relationship. If you need time to yourself, he accuses you of pulling away. No matter what you choose, you somehow end up feeling responsible for his emotions. Think about how exhausting that is. You start carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to carry. You become the caretaker of someone else's happiness while your own needs slowly disappear into the background. Then comes another powerful weapon: confusion. One day he's affectionate, generous, and attentive. The next day he's cold, distant, and critical. Nothing makes sense. You replay conversations in your mind, searching for the mistake you must have made. You wonder if you said the wrong thing. You wonder if you're expecting too much. But the constant shift isn't always accidental. Unpredictability keeps you emotionally off balance. When you don't know which version of him you'll meet, you spend your energy trying to please him instead of protecting yourself. And that's exactly where manipulation becomes dangerous. Another tactic is gaslighting. It begins with small moments that seem insignificant. You remember something clearly, but he insists it never happened. He tells you that you're too sensitive. He says you're imagining things. He claims you're overreacting, even when your feelings are completely reasonable. At first, you defend yourself. But after hearing those same messages over and over again, you begin to wonder if he's right. That's how self-doubt is planted, not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of tiny moments that slowly reshape the way you see reality. You stop trusting your memory. You stop trusting your instincts. Eventually, you stop trusting yourself. Never underestimate how dangerous that can become. Your instincts exist for a reason. They notice patterns before your mind can explain them. When something consistently feels wrong, don't ignore that feeling simply because someone else keeps telling you that you're imagining it. Manipulation also isolates. It rarely begins with the words, "Don't see your friends anymore." Instead, it sounds more subtle. "They don't really care about you. Your family doesn't understand us. I just want more time together. They're a bad influence." Little by little, the people who once supported you begin disappearing from your life. Without realizing it, your entire emotional world becomes centered on one person. And when one person becomes your only source of love, validation, and approval, leaving feels almost impossible. That's why healthy relationships encourage connection, not isolation. Someone who genuinely loves you wants you to have meaningful friendships, family relationships, personal goals, and independence. They don't fear your support system because they aren't trying to replace it. A narcissistic man may also manipulate through affection. He gives love generously when things are going his way. He praises you when you're meeting his expectations. He showers you with attention after conflict, making you believe everything has changed. But when you disagree, set boundaries, or express your needs, that affection suddenly disappears. Love becomes conditional. Approval becomes a reward. Silence becomes punishment. Without realizing it, you're being trained to avoid conflict and suppress your own voice simply to keep receiving affection. But love should never feel like a prize you have to earn. Real love doesn't disappear every time you stand up for yourself. It doesn't make you feel anxious about expressing your thoughts. It doesn't force you to sacrifice your identity just to keep the relationship alive. Here's something worth remembering. Manipulation works best when you believe you deserve it. That's why protecting your self-worth is one of the greatest forms of self-defense. The stronger your confidence becomes, the harder it is for someone to convince you that disrespect is normal. When you know your value, you stop accepting behavior that constantly leaves you feeling confused, guilty, or emotionally drained. Healthy love brings clarity. Manipulation creates chaos. Healthy love builds trust. Manipulation creates fear. Healthy love gives you confidence. Manipulation makes you question everything. Never confuse emotional control with emotional connection. One makes you feel safe enough to be yourself. The other makes you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word will start another argument or another silent treatment. You deserve a relationship where honesty is welcomed, where your thoughts are respected, and where your feelings are never treated as weaknesses to exploit. The right person won't need to manipulate you into staying. They will inspire you to stay because they consistently treat you with respect, kindness, and genuine care. Remember this whenever you're uncertain. Anyone can control someone through fear, guilt, or confusion, but only someone with real character can earn your trust through honesty, consistency, and love. And that's the kind of relationship worth protecting. Love is one of the most powerful emotions a person can experience. It has the ability to heal wounds, build confidence, and create a sense of security unlike anything else. But when you're involved with a narcissistic man, love often becomes something very different. Instead of being freely given, it becomes conditional. Instead of feeling safe, it begins to feel like something you constantly have to earn. That's one of the clearest warning signs that something is deeply wrong. In the beginning, his affection may feel overwhelming. He showers you with compliments, messages, gifts, and promises about the future. He makes you feel like you finally found someone who sees you, values you, and can't imagine life without you. The attention is intense. The connection feels almost too perfect. You think you've met someone who truly understands your heart. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. What happens when you stop giving him exactly what he wants? What happens when you disagree? What happens when you're tired? What happens when you need support instead of always providing it? This is where the pattern begins to reveal itself. A narcissistic man often gives love generously when he's receiving admiration, attention, or control. As long as you're praising him, agreeing with him, and making him feel important, everything seems wonderful. He's affectionate. He's charming. He's attentive. He says all the right things. But the moment you express a need of your own, everything changes. Suddenly, the warmth disappears, the kindness fades, the affection becomes distant. You begin wondering what happened to the man who once couldn't stop telling you how amazing you were. The truth is painful but important. If someone's love disappears every time they don't get their way, it was never unconditional love. It was approval with conditions attached. Healthy love doesn't vanish because of a disagreement. Healthy love doesn't become cold because you set a boundary. Healthy love doesn't punish you for having emotions. Real love remains respectful even during conflict. That's the difference. Many people become trapped because they spend months, sometimes years, trying to get back to the person they met at the beginning. They believe if they love harder, become more patient, or sacrifice a little more, things will return to the way they once were. But they're chasing a version of the relationship that may never have been real. The early affection may have been designed to create emotional attachment rather than lasting emotional security. Once the bond is strong, the effort decreases because the other person believes you won't leave. Think about how emotionally exhausting that becomes. You start measuring your worth by how much affection you're receiving that day. If he's smiling, you relax. If he's distant, you panic. If he's affectionate again, you feel relief. Without realizing it, your emotional well-being becomes dependent on his changing moods instead of your own inner confidence. That isn't love. That's emotional instability. Love should bring peace, not constant uncertainty. Another common pattern is that affection becomes transactional. Every act of kindness seems to come with an invisible expectation. If he buys you something, he expects complete loyalty. If he helps you once, he reminds you of it repeatedly. If he apologizes, he expects immediate forgiveness without changing his behavior. Nothing is freely given. Everything has a price. Even simple words like "I love you" begin to feel connected to what you're willing to do for him. Over time, you may find yourself constantly asking, what do I need to do so everything feels normal again? That question alone should make you stop and reflect. Love isn't supposed to feel like a full-time performance. You shouldn't have to earn basic kindness. You shouldn't have to prove every single day that you're worthy of respect. Your value doesn't increase because someone finally decides to treat you well. Your value has always existed. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing attention with love. Attention can be intense. It can feel exciting. It can make your heart race. But attention without consistency isn't love. Someone can give you endless compliments today and ignore your emotional needs tomorrow. Real love is consistent. It shows up on ordinary days. It remains present during disagreements. It listens without always trying to win. It comforts instead of controlling. It encourages instead of diminishing. A healthy partner doesn't withhold affection to teach you a lesson. They communicate. They work through problems together. They don't make you wonder whether you're lovable every time conflict appears. And here's something else that's incredibly important. People who experience conditional love often begin blaming themselves for the relationship's problems. They think, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I should be more understanding. Maybe if I change, everything will be okay. But love that requires you to abandon your identity isn't healthy love. If you have to silence your opinions to receive affection, if you have to ignore your pain to avoid rejection, if you have to constantly earn kindness that should already exist, then you're not building a relationship. You're negotiating for emotional survival. Never accept a relationship where affection is used as a reward and distance is used as punishment. You deserve someone who celebrates your individuality instead of demanding your obedience. You deserve someone who stays kind even when life becomes difficult. You deserve someone whose care doesn't disappear the moment you express a different opinion. The strongest relationships are not built on perfection. They're built on mutual respect, honest communication, patience, and consistency. Two people won't always agree. They won't always have perfect days. But genuine love refuses to become a weapon. Always remember this. Real love doesn't ask you to become less of yourself so someone else can feel like more. It doesn't make you compete for attention that should be freely given. It doesn't leave you constantly wondering where you stand. The right person won't make you chase affection like it's a prize at the end of a race. They'll offer love through their actions, their consistency, and their respect every single day. Because true love isn't measured by how intensely someone loves you when everything benefits them. It's measured by how faithfully they choose kindness, respect, and compassion even when life isn't perfect. And when someone loves you that way, you'll never have to question whether you matter. You'll know it because they'll show it not just when it's convenient, but every single day. One of the greatest tragedies of being in a relationship with a narcissistic man is that you often don't notice what's happening until you've already started losing yourself. It rarely begins with harsh criticism or obvious emotional abuse. If it did, most people would walk away immediately. Instead, it begins with small comments, subtle comparisons, quiet disappointments, and moments that seem too insignificant to question. But those moments add up. Day after day, week after week, they slowly reshape the way you see yourself. Think about how confidence is built. Confidence grows when people encourage you, respect your opinions, celebrate your progress, and remind you that your voice matters. It grows in environments where you feel emotionally safe. It grows when you know you can make mistakes without being humiliated. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine living with someone who constantly points out what you could have done better. Someone who rarely notices your strengths but never misses your flaws. Someone who makes compliments feel rare but criticism feel normal. Eventually, even the strongest person begins to question themselves. A narcissistic man often doesn't destroy confidence in one dramatic moment. He chips away at it, little by little. Maybe he laughs at your ideas and calls it a joke. Maybe he compares you to someone else. Maybe he tells you that you're too emotional, too sensitive, too ambitious, or never good enough. Each comment may seem small on its own, but repeated over time, those words become part of the story you begin telling yourself. Words have power. The voices we hear repeatedly often become the voices inside our own minds. That's why emotional criticism can be just as damaging as visible wounds. You may smile on the outside while silently carrying beliefs that were never true to begin with. You start doubting your intelligence. You question your appearance. You wonder if your dreams are unrealistic. You apologize for expressing your feelings. You second guess every decision. Before long, you're asking for reassurance about things you once felt completely confident doing. That's how confidence disappears. Not because you suddenly became less capable, but because someone slowly convinced you that you were. One of the most painful parts is that you may stop recognizing yourself. Remember the person you were before the relationship. The one who laughed freely, spoke confidently, spent time with friends, chased goals, and believed in the future. Now compare that person to the one who's constantly worried about saying the wrong thing, making the wrong decision, or upsetting someone else's mood. That change didn't happen overnight. It happened through repetition, repeated criticism, repeated dismissal, repeated emotional neglect, repeated reminders that somehow you were never quite enough. A narcissistic man may also make your accomplishments feel smaller than they really are. You work hard for something meaningful, hoping to share your excitement, only to receive indifference or criticism instead of encouragement. Instead of celebrating your success, he finds a flaw. Instead of saying, I'm proud of you, he changes the subject or reminds you of something you haven't achieved yet. Over time, you stop celebrating yourself because you've learned to expect disappointment instead of support. Think about how heartbreaking that is. A relationship should be a place where your victories are multiplied, not minimized. Another damaging pattern is comparison. You may hear comments like, why can't you be more like her? Or someone else would appreciate everything I do. These comparisons aren't designed to help you grow. They're designed to make you feel insecure. The goal isn't improvement, the goal is control. Because insecure people are easier to manipulate. People who constantly question their worth are more likely to accept treatment they would have rejected if they believed in themselves. That's why protecting your confidence isn't selfish, it's essential. Confidence isn't arrogance. Confidence is knowing that your value doesn't disappear because someone refuses to recognize it. There will be moments when you start believing the criticism. You may think, maybe I really am the problem, but stop and ask yourself an important question. Are you actually becoming a worse person? Or are you simply becoming emotionally exhausted from constantly trying to prove your worth? Those are two very different things. Exhaustion often looks like weakness, but it isn't. It's the natural result of carrying emotional weight that was never yours to carry. Here's something every person needs to remember. No healthy relationship requires you to become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. The right partner won't fear your confidence. They'll encourage it. They won't compete with your success. They'll celebrate it. They won't silence your opinions. They'll want to hear them. They'll remind you of your strengths on the days you've forgotten them yourself. That's what genuine love does. It builds, it strengthens, it restores. It never tears down the very person it claims to care about. One of the most powerful moments in life is when you begin separating your identity from someone else's opinion. The day you realize that another person's criticism doesn't define your value is the day you begin taking your power back. You stop measuring your worth by their approval. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop asking permission to be yourself. You remember who you were before fear became your daily companion. And once that confidence begins returning, something incredible happens. You start setting boundaries. You start saying no without guilt. You stop chasing validation from people who never intended to give it. You begin choosing peace over constant emotional chaos. Never forget this truth. Confidence is not something another person gives you. It's something they can either nurture or try to destroy. But even if someone has spent years convincing you that you're not enough, that story does not have to become your future. Your value was never determined by how loudly someone criticized you. Your worth was never reduced because someone failed to appreciate you. Your dreams are still valid. Your voice still matters. Your heart is still worthy of kindness, respect, and genuine love. The moment you stop believing the lies that were spoken over your life is the moment you begin rebuilding the confidence that was there all along. And when you truly believe in your own worth again, you'll never settle for a relationship that asks you to sacrifice it.